Hey, I'm Alex back from Board Game Co. and today I'm doing 5 second edition re-implementations, new versions reviews. These are basically 5 games that in some way, shape, or form have a new version. Sometimes it's basically just new art, other times it's a change in theme, other times it's a standalone expansion and edition. Either way, let's go ahead and dive into all of these, starting off with Set a Watch. Set a Watch over here. This one is Set a Watch Forsaken Isle, and I should say also, by the way, for all of these games, I'll be giving a general quick overview of the game, notes on the expansion or change or whatever it is that's on the table, and then of course my thoughts on it. Set a Watch Forsaken Isle continues the Set a Watch universe. We had Set a Watch, Sword of a Coin, Set a Watch Forsaken Isle, and there's also the Doomed Run and Big Box and all of that, but this is Forsaken Isle, which is going to continue the Set a Watch universe with just basically more of the same. There might be some small differences, we'll talk about that soon. But the basic idea of Set a Watch is you control a bunch of heroes. It's a 1 to 4 player game. I recommend it at 1 or 2 players personally. I think it's best solo, but you can try it different ways. It's basically going to control your heroes. You have a little hero dashboard. You have a variety of abilities you'll select for those heroes, and then you're going up against a line of enemies that is heading towards your campfire, trying to take you down. You're going to roll dice, assign those dice to abilities on your characters, assign those dice to take down enemies from the sheer strength of the die, and try to basically survive and stay alive and manage the campfire and keep things going in your favor longer than things dying and you just losing the game. That's the basic idea of the game. It's got great art, it's got a lot of characters, and Set a Watch Forsaken Isle is going to introduce a few new things. First of all, introduce new monsters. I think it was, oh my gosh, was it the Octopus Rock, Octorock, or something like that. I can't remember which one it was. There's one of the most adorable enemies you'll face off against, though, but I forget its exact name. Is it on the back here? It's not on the back. I wish it was on the back. It also introduces a bunch of new characters, my personal favorite of which is the Merchant. Not to be confused with the merchant you can buy things from in the game, but rather they take the Merchant from Merchants of... Oh my gosh. There's another game in the Set a Watch universe. Merchants of a Coin? No. I can't remember the name of it. There's another game in the Set a Watch universe, something Merchant, but that one, they basically have the art for that merchant, and it's a character in this game, and she manipulates the market and uses the market to her advantage in a way that I really enjoy. And there's another character, again, I can't remember the name of it, I apologize, but one of them really manipulates the campfire, using things to grow the campfire, and then to expend the campfire, blow things up. A very fun character. Those are my personal 2 new favorite characters from this expansion. But the expansion is primarily introducing new enemies, new locations, and new characters. There's not really a lot of rule changes from what I can see. The only thing I noted as a possible rules change is there's a new shorter Kraken mode where you play 5 rounds instead of 8, which is reasonable because there are critiques against Set a Watch that the game can run a little long. The 5 round mode is good in that sense, but also feels like you're not able to really develop as much, so it's like I like it, but I don't at the same time, if that makes sense. As far as the rest of the content, no major changes in my opinion to Set a Watch from Forsaken Isle. It's more content in a game that I like. It still has some of the complaints I have against Set a Watch, which again, one, they are addressing, but it's not a perfect fix, which is the game length can be a little shorter now, but it also feels a little less satisfying, so it fixed one issue, caused another. But then my other issue is I find setup to be a little tedious for this game, lots of just structuring things in the setup that aren't great, and there might be changes in the setup, I don't know, I didn't compare rulebook to rulebook on this, but it didn't seem like there were major changes there. But that's basically going to be Set a Watch Forsaken Isle. My overall thoughts on the game is it's a very solid solo/cooperative, crunchy game which you're trying to manage your abilities and try to stay alive and survive, and it can outstay its welcome and is a little tedious setup. Overall, a 3.5 out of 5. That's going to be Set a Watch Forsaken Isle. Moving on to Finca, which I think has the least changes of anything on the table. I think the Kraken mode is new to this one. Finca, on the other hand, I think the only thing that really changed is the player count. I didn't spot any other changes. There might be some scoring differences, I don't know, but I think there's basically the player count expands to 5 players in Finca over here. This is from Pandasaurus Games, and it's okay. I'm skipping to my opinion. Let's go ahead and talk about the game over here. Finca generally, and this is a re-implementation of a 2008 title, if I'm not mistaken. The Pandasaurus is bringing Finca back to you, and the general idea is you're placing these little tokens and goods on the island, and players are trying to gather tokens from this rondel to be able to fulfill these orders. So as you move around the rondel, when you land on things, you take that much stuff, so a very Mancala-esque mechanism going on here, and it also decides how far you can move around. So you're basically trying to manage the little rondel and the puzzle of getting the things you need while not setting other players up with good moves. As you gather these tokens, you're going to be trading them for these orders, and there's various bonuses you can get as well as these little personal action tiles, which I think the game calls it an advanced mode, but I would always recommend using it even for your first play. I believe there's also a small mini expansion, but I don't have my hands on that, so I'm just talking about the base game here. As far as changes to the original, like I said already, it's player count and then new updated art and all that from Pandasaurus, but past the fresh coat of paint and the player count, it didn't see any other changes to the original Finca. As far as my thoughts on Finca, I think it's a fun Mancala element going on where you try to get as many things as possible and cash them in for goods. It's very straightforward and very simple. I think it does make for a good gateway game. For me personally, it's going to come in at a 3 out of 5. It is a good, enjoyable gateway game, but it's not overly satisfying. It's just, move things, collect tokens, and trade them in. It's very much a contract fulfillment at its core with nothing really to mix that up, past, of course, the Mancala elements, which is a fun puzzle, but it just comes in a little on the lighter side. A 3 out of 5 for me. Moving on over here to Tinner's Trail. We're going to clear out this side before we move to the other side. Tinner's Trail, this is a older reprint by now. It's old is relative in the board game space, but I think this is 2 or 3 years old. This is from Alley Cat Games. They reprinted Martin Wallace's Tinner's Trail, which might also be a 2008 title. I have to go back and check the original Tinner's Trail. I'm not sure offhand. But the original Tinner's Trail from Martin Wallace is basically a game of trying to... This is going to be a harder game to explain in very short, but we'll try to distill it. You're basically managing tin and ore and copper and all these resources on the island as you set up your little locations trying to mine from the ground. You're going to be utilizing... Every round, you're going to be bidding on different things to be able to expand your networks, to be able to put in different technologies and tools to make it more efficient, to get rid of water. Water makes your job harder. And you're doing all this while managing the market of fluctuating goods prices every single round as you play. So it's basically just about the raw resource consumption, all very historically accurate, historically inspired, I should say. But you're trying to manage the resources you're gaining, you're trying to bid on various upgrades to improve your entire operations, you're bidding on new locations as well, so there's a lot of bidding going on in this game, and then you're doing so while trying to manage the market and sales to get as many points as possible in this fairly distilled game as far as what it's doing, but incredibly strategic as it plays. This new version over here has a few changes, and this is where I don't know the full comprehensive list. There's 2 mini expansions going on. There are some changes to make it a little less random setup, a little more fixed setup, so it's not completely chaotic and all over the place. Obviously, new art, new production, and all of that. Some small changes like that. There might be another one that I'm forgetting. I think there's another smaller change that I am forgetting from the original game, but it's mostly a new coat of paint, some tweaks and changes, and then the 2 mini expansions. As far as my thoughts on Tinner's Trail, I think Tinner's Trail is an excellent Martin Wallace game. It's just not my favorite Martin Wallace game. This is one of those games that's going to a certain extent, live in the shadow of its big brother, Brass Birmingham. They are very different, but they do have some small elements of similarity going on, and Brass has much more going on in that game to make it a more rewarding experience. Don't get me wrong, I think Tinner's Trail is delightful. I definitely recommend checking it out if you have a chance. It's on Board Game Arena if you want to see it there, although I will say, because of the nature of the frequent bidding, I don't recommend it for asynchronous play. Make sure you're playing it simultaneously if you're going to enjoy it on Board Game Arena, or check it out there. I think it is an excellent game from Martin Wallace that, for me personally, if I want something that's very much in this vein, I'll pick Brass over it, and if I want something a little bit different, I'll usually go with Anno 1800. All of them having some degree of similarity while being very, very different. But yeah, it's a tough one because it's very good, just overshadowed a bit. For me, it's going to come in at a 3.5 out of 5. I think it arguably should be higher. It's hard. Rating game sometimes is hard because I'm trying to there's the rating game in isolation and then in comparison to other games. It's a very good game, overshadowed by other games in my opinion. In any case, moving on from there, let's go ahead to Paperback. Paperback 10th Anniversary Edition from Fowers Games. This is a reimplementation of Paperback. It's a 2nd edition, or 10th Anniversary Edition, but I think it's only the 2nd edition. I don't think there were other editions until now. And Paperback is going to be a deck-building word creation game, which players are going to start with a basic deck of cards. From there, you're going to buy more letters to add to your deck, and then you're trying to go ahead and fulfill these words to generate points and generate currency, which you're going to use to buy new cards. And there's a whole aspect of trying to create, a 7, then 8, then 9, then 10-letter word in the game, which is going to be one of the game end triggers, while also going through the marketplaces and buying all the various titles at the top. So effectively sort of Dominion style, where these are going to be cards you add to your deck that are not necessarily as good as other cards, so they clog your deck a little bit, but they do give you flexibility and freedom, and more importantly, they give you points. The 10th Anniversary Edition, again, not necessarily a fully comprehensive list over here, but this edition of the game is going to doing a few things. First of all, they changed up the core mechanism of the marketplace itself, giving you fewer marketplace areas to worry about, although they did actually make sure, both in terms of there's a few elements they changed in the game that they gave you the tools you need to be able to make it backwards compatible to the older version if you want, and it's also in the rules. Speaking of which, the rules also have a bunch of modules as far as different ways of playing the game, from cooperative to solo, all these different ways to play the core game. For me, my thoughts on Paperback over here is not going to change significantly since I first dove into it. I think that the changes they made are nice quality of life changes, but they don't overall impact my enjoyment. The additional modules are going to be the main thing that's going to be on the lookout for there, and that's going to be additional modules and rule changes, some of which help the game state. So my main critique of Paperback has always been that My turn I love and I enjoy doing that, but your turn I don't care, and your turn can often be very slow. So can my turn. Because you're trying to find that perfect ward, you're trying to optimize, being like, I know there's a ward out of reach. This game can slow down a bit, which is why I've always loved Paperback Adventures as a solo game that kind of takes away that element where you're trying to wait on someone else to take their turn. So for me, overall, Paperback still has that drag aspect. It still has that aspect where the game can go on too long because players are trying to craft the perfect ward, which I don't love. The game does do some things to change that. These are rules I don't remember from the original edition. If they weren't in there, I apologize. But there are some rules that will reward other players for helping you with a ward. If I provide a ward for you and you accept it, we both get a reward effectively, which can keep other players involved on your turn while also rewarding players for doing so. So I do like that little rules adjustment or change, and there are a few other things like that as well as the various modes. For me personally, I still think Paperback Adventures is my favorite version of this series because of those problems, but if you are looking for a ward game that is going to be rewarding while a ward game is going to be rewarding enough while possibly having some issues, then this is definitely worth checking out. And it's actually interesting because we just talked about Tinner's Trail and Board Game Arena and how I don't recommend playing it on Board Game Arena because of the asynchronous nature of bidding. When your player goes 3 and then 2 hours later someone goes 4, and then 3 hours later someone goes 6, or whatever it is. When you have bidding in asynchronous games, that can actually make the game experience much more worse and just less satisfying and fun. I actually do recommend checking out Paperback and Hardback on Board Game Arena, because those kind of solve the issue, because I will take my turn, go do the dishes or whatever, and then you take your turn, and we don't sit there and wait doing each other's turns. We're leading our own lives. So my favorite way to play Paperback or Hardback, which is another version of this game, is to play them directly on Board Game Arena, specifically not in real time. And if I want a real-time version of Paperback Adventures is my favorite version of that game. And then lastly, we have Roborally Transformers over here. Roborally Transformers from Renegade Games takes the classic Roborally and then adds a bunch of rules and adjustments to them to fit around the Transformers theme. To start off with, you're going to have Transformers instead of, well, I forgot to tell you about the basic game. How do you play Roborally over here? Roborally is going to be an action programming game in which you are basically playing down cars into a row and then moving your robots around the board. So you're going to have these boards over here, and you're trying to move these robots around the board to complete objectives, but you're doing so while trying to program your moves in advance, and that means you both are operating on a bit of a timer here, trying to get your moves done in time, but also as other players shoot you or bump into you or things happen, the rest of the pre-programmed sequence is going to result in chaos, which means this is a game that's part strategy and part pure chaos, and usually a lot of fun as you go through it. That's the basic premise of Roborally. Transformers is going to have Transformers instead of your robots to obviously have the theme, but then there are a bunch of rule changes as well. I'm going to focus more on the broad strokes over here as opposed to itemized list. The main thing is going to be a lot of locations on the board that depend on the state of your robot, something that's new to Transformers as opposed to the original game. So you can have different things you can interact with depending on whether you're playing as your robot, as your Transformer, or as your alt. And then additionally, there's a lot more focus on firing as well as agency throughout the game. So whenever you're spinning on something, you can choose not to spin on an automated mechanism or element, which that part I don't think I liked as much, because to me part of the fun of Transformers is the chaos of the game, and having a little less chaos makes it a little less fun in my opinion. But they also counter that by having a lot more shooting going on in the game, a lot more control over shooting and a lot more shooting, which means there's going to be a bit more other elements to kind of balance all of that out. What you're left with at the end of this is going to be a game, and there's a bunch of new board elements as well, some things you haven't seen in the original Transformers. So for me, I think that if you like Transformers and if you like Roborally, this is a natural fit. This kind of adds the theme and does so in a way that mechanically changes up the game in a bunch of small ways, maintaining the overall feel of Roborally while making it unique enough to be worth owning or looking at, but ultimately it still is Roborally. If you don't like Roborally, I don't think this changes your mind. If you do like Roborally, I don't think this changes your mind. It's just more of the same. Think of it as, Ticket to Ride and Ticket to Ride Europe. This tweaks, this changes, but ultimately it's the same core game. To that end, it's going to get the same core rating I gave to Roborally. It's going to be a 3.5 out of 5. A good game with a lot of chaos and pre-programming elements that has been overshadowed since then. One of my favorite games in the programming your moves out genre is going to be Mechs and Minions. It is an expensive version of the game, but it is to me the best version of that pre-programming element, maintaining the chaos, but also doing so in a cooperative play, which makes it less frustrating when somebody else lucks their way into the win as opposed to you. But if you do want that chaos and as well as the Transformers theme, this definitely will have you covered. That's basically what we have here. 5 newer versions of games, implementations. We have Forsaken Isle over here. We have Forsaken Isle. We have Finca, Tinner's Trail, Paperback, and Roborally Transformers for you. All pretty decent. None of them being particularly amazing in terms of the originals compared to where they are. This is more of the same, more more of the same. Finished Trail adds some new expansions which are nice. Past that is some small quality life changes. Paperback, I think, is the best version of the game to date. Definitely worth picking this one up over the others, but I don't think it'll majorly change your mind if you didn't like the original. And Roborally Transformers, just a bit of different themes as well as some different elements to go along with it. In any case, then until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.